Welcome to Emergent-Seed's announcement of our first round microgrant winners. My name is Adriana Smith. I'm a writer and poet. Before the coronavirus hit, I was the host of an open mic series here in DC called Makers. We put on live events showcasing local creatives, including singer-songwriters, musicians, poets, storytellers, and others who make things, make art. Makers had built a community of over 500 people here in the DC area in just less than a year. Suddenly, the COVID crisis shut down the ability for writers and composers to perform their work in physical venues. So I and a group of other artists started emergent-seed. We are dedicated to becoming a social enterprise made up of creatives helping creatives. Working as volunteers for emergent-seed, all of us, more than 20 people, are creatives in our own right with serious industry experience. The first milestone for emergent-seed's efforts will be tonight, when we announce the winners of the first round of submissions. All the applicants went through a rigorous evaluation and were independently reviewed by multiple reviewers. And the winners will not only receive the $500 microgrants, but have the opportunity to have their pieces workshopped with professionals in their fields, so their work can be broadcast in future high-quality virtual events for which they will receive royalties from any proceeds raised. Additionally, emergent-seed will be using its industry contacts to help them get additional recognition and revenue for their creative work. And we're especially proud of the diversity and breadth of the artists and their submissions, selected on the basis of the merit of their work by other experienced artists. To remind everyone of the rules of this first round, artists could apply in one of 4 creative categories: poetry, storytelling, song and lyrics, or instrumental. Each submitted work had to be original, previously unpublished or unproduced, and be a complete performance in under 5 minutes. Additionally, for this first round, applicants had to be from the greater DC area and aged 18 through 35. In the next rounds, we anticipate expanding these criteria, so look for emergent-seed's announcement for when and how we will accept applications for the next round of microgrants. I want to thank everyone who applied for their time and the opportunity to share their work with us. We see you, we hear you, and we encourage you to keep creating and applying. And now, we are going to announce our winners of this first round by showing you very short clips from their video submissions. These clips will give you, in effect, a sneak preview for the full performances that we will be broadcasting later this summer. Stay tuned for those exciting world premieres. Since we have multiple winners in different categories, we're going to alternate the categories as we introduce winners, so watch all the way through to the end of this video. We will also recognize a few additional excellent submissions. We at emergent-seed think you're going to be very impressed, just as we were, with what DC emerging artists have produced for your entertainment. Everyone you are about to see not only performs their submission, but wrote and created it. Here are our 10 microgrant winners. Bstedwell is not just an accomplished musician, she's also a filmmaker, storyteller, and musical theater creator. In 2018, B won the Whammy's DC Award for Best Pop Album. Here now is a taste of her new original song, Miles Away, written during the early days of the quarantine.
1,000 miles away, 1,000 miles away. reading poems. Love is a tibia, is singing to the ocean. My love in DC is playing with the baby. My love is
Dylan Arredondo is a storyteller and theater maker who in his video submission takes us on an exploration of his relationship to his Japanese-Mexican heritage, uncovered through, of all things, the dessert mochi. Told through the prism of his unusual family reunion for Mochi Day, Dylan reveals the meaning and sacrifices of his ancestors' emigrations to the U.S.
Mochi is pounded. And when I think about why my dad is the way he is, I often revisit this image of pounding as an image of assimilation. His father was constantly trying to erase his Mexicanness when trying to fit in amongst the Japanese family. His mother was trying to erase her Japaneseness when trying to fit in amongst the Mexican family. Both were just trying their hardest to not be outsiders. And if that meant, hey, pounding out a little piece of who you intrinsically were in order to avoid being alienated for marrying someone who was outside the community, maybe it was a price worth paying.
Langston Hughes is a 19-year-old saxophonist, and like the great poet with whom he shares a name, sees jazz as a means of communication. Langston wrote this piece, Where From Here, upon making the leap to study music at Howard University. Susanna Menlo and Devry Lewis form the ensemble named D.S. Alcello, through which they offer unique world music performances for two cellos. They fell in love with the Turkish Ladino song Avre est Abajur and made their own variations to it here as arranged for the cello. Poetry has been a way for director, actor, and multimedia designer Kelly Colburn to process the world. In her poem, Untitled Experimental Ode to Consumptive, Nostalgic, Unrequited Love, Kelly explores how we use our devices to communicate our personal and public heartbreak.
Even now, I imagine that voice as you, singing thick like a guilty embrace. Why do you conduct my morning commute? My love for you stems from daydreams, like an estuary you seep. I've never loved someone this long. It's hard to call it love, but harder to call it something else. Maybe the term is consumption? You consume me, I consume you.
Nyffy Russell, who goes by the artist name Nyffy, is a singer-songwriter and a recent graduate of NYU. She has performed across New York City and Washington, D.C. Her song, Hanging On Too Long, showcases Nyffy's rich voice, lamenting how hard it can be to lose a close friendship.
Or you won't find me sitting by our cherry tree waiting for us, baby. I'm a stranger, he's a stranger too. In the heat of the fire, I get lost in the flames. It's far too hard.
You might know Juliette Bell for her all-female acoustic trio Wicked Sycamore, which won the 2019 Charm City Bluegrass Band Competition. Nowadays, You can probably find her sitting and playing on her porch in Tacoma Park, which is exactly where Juliette wrote Toe Beans, named for the pads on the underside of a cat's paw. Of all genres, musical theater moves Josh Cleveland the most. Josh is a pianist, educator, and theater aficionado, performing in and directing music for local theater groups. Like so many moving songs, Josh wrote Maple Trees out of a recent heartbreak.
As we talk, we'll carve new stitches into time and space with ease. Just like lovers carve initials onto sun-kissed maple trees.
Yasmine El Hassan honors her maternal lineage in An Ode to My Mother. Things come full circle for Yasmine as she recalls sitting in her mother's Palestinian elementary school, where Yasmine herself returned last summer.
The principal tells me that my mother was always smiling. I'm surprised. No one else smiled as much as Nasreen did, she says, as though it's an enigma that still confuses her. Even here, in this chair behind the windows lined with bars, I ask, and she says yes, even here she would smile. I never understood how she was always smiling, and you smile just like her.
Andrew Grossman is a composer, singer-songwriter, guitarist, synthesizer, and leader of the band The North Country. While his new song, Everything Ends, is about the loss of a friendship, we couldn't stop hearing his words with the hope that it would apply soon to the coronavirus. It's the line that follows his refrain, which holds the deeper truth for us all.
Try to practice loss of memory on every little memory of loss. Looking forward, never backward, mainly from the fear of tallying the cost. Cause everything ends. Everything ends. Everything ends. Nothing stays the same.
We also want to recognize 3 submissions which for various reasons will be released or performed in other ways besides through emergent-seed, and thus couldn't be declared winners this round. An award-winning musician, Brandon Felder is an innovator, an educator proudly serving Prince George's County Public Schools for nearly 15 years. He recently lost his father to COVID and is at work on an album in dedication to him and to his own influences as a musician. This clip from his piece For You, which will be on that album, is particularly poignant as Brandon wrote it for his wife. A software engineer by day, Anthony Craven played in bands in school and is now getting ready to release his own songs. How Long is inspired by bossa nova and Brazilian music. And finally, we also want to recognize Carla Neuhaus. When she isn't bringing down the house with her poetry, including holding the record for the only 3-time Youth Speaks Seattle Grand Slam champion, Carlin is an educator, community activist, and a student at Howard University. In her poem, White House Walls, Carlin literally personifies the voice of that iconic building, imagining what those walls have seen and hidden and been startled by over the course of our nation's history.
I cannot speak. I am a building, a White House forced to be just as silent as the people who built me, so I just let the floorboards creak and pray someone will decipher the Morse code 8 years ago. I heard them talking, said a black man will be president for the first time, and for the first time in almost 200 years, I felt like all the dead wood of me would turn back to trees. Felt like I was alive for the first time in centuries, and when he showed up, we stared back at each other, marveling at this reality we didn't think it was possible, but it was possible.
I want to thank again everyone who's collaborated on making this first round possible and for helping emergent-seed showcase some of our greater DC area's amazing emerging talent. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and sign up for our email list to find out about the broadcast of our winners' full performances. And look for the announcement of the next round of applications that we expect will open later in August. And that wraps up our list of 10 microgrant winners. We can't wait to showcase their full performances soon. Keep a lookout for our announcement of a virtual event later this summer.